And Maggie and I are going to talk about the process of how the scripts kind of went down, like the changes that we made. I proposed a few scripts to her and then she did the art and then we went back and made changes when we needed to fit things in. So this is going to be fun because this is the first time I'm hearing some of Maggie's ideas or thoughts that she got when she read the script. Do you want to talk about how we even got into this collaboration?
Oh yeah, we both know Jade, who's also in Kids Comics Unite. And I was hanging out with her one day and I was talking to her about how, like, for this anthology, I wanted to sign up, but I wanted to just focus on the illustration, or like I just wanted to collaborate and just focus on the visual side of it. And she told me about Johnell, who at first it was ends up being a funny story, but I thought Janelle had a story about a wishing well and like a star. And I thought like that's perfect for me. That's right up my alley. I already see like how I would want to tackle a story like that. And that's when you had told me that it wasn't actually about stars and wells, but it was about like star whales or something.
Space Wells, yeah.
Space whales, yes. But yes, I definitely went into it initially thinking that like, oh, Janelle like has this story she wants to do. It sounds perfect. But it ended up being a lot more of just like you and I talking and like you bringing a lot of stories out
I
actually.
sent you some ideas of, picture books that I'd had that or other ideas that I had. And then you picked the one about the water train, which is a story I'm actually kind of developing. But our version is totally different. So I'm curious as to why you zeroed in on that one.
I mean, you had me at Hayao Mizuyaki. Like I it's funny, I just I just went to a webinar where they were saying that like everybody uses Studio Ghibli as like comp titles and like to avoid it, people like use it as inspiration for like so much. It just immediately made me think like whimsical and colorful and it's going to have an interesting world. And the water train idea too, I don't know, it just had I didn't know what it was going to look like necessarily. And it sounded like something that could be really fun to potentially draw. Which in hindsight, I don't do vehicle design. Like that's not something I typically like am sketching or thinking about. Like I don't draw cars or like bikes or any mode of transportation. So it was really interesting, like the studying I had to do up front. What the heck does a train look like? How does it go together? And like, what am I thinking of? And I tried to make it very trainy in the beginning, and now the final product is like it's made out of seashells. Like, the funniest thing in the art process, I spent like a week putting together this like very like at first I was thinking like it's gonna be like this really old like industrial style train and it's gonna be like crusted with barnacles and coral and it's like the ship for Pirates of the Caribbean 2. Like I had this whole vision. It was actually Bert, also in KCU. We were talking about like, oh, what if it was made out of seashell? Something instead of like it being covered in it, what if it was made of it? So I actually looked up like a JPEG of just like a seashell poster and like I swear to God in 5 minutes just whipped out a sketch. And I showed both to my critique group and everybody instantly loved the 5 minute sketch, which that's always how it works out. It's not what I had imagined going in, but it ended up being what worked out.
I'm going to very sneakily share my screen and show people at least the ink version of your incredible train. When you showed me this train, I was like, this is so
Oh,
cool.
good.
Like, the idea that where you took it is so cool. Yeah. Can you see that? I mean, look at that.
Yes, yeah.
And this isn't even the colored version of it, which is even more magnificent, but I'll post that in the website so people can see that. But yeah, I'm just the thought process is interesting. I hadn't realized that you were doing like the industrial thing. So that must have been really liberating to just move into that organic style for the train.
I will say, just like from a visual artist point of view, it always like cracks me up. It really is the things you're not even thinking. It's almost like instinct, and it's just something you whip out. That's always where my best ideas come from. So it's just funny how that works out.
So I'm going to share the screen for the first script because this was the first. I kind of just set an idea, and this was the loose kind of rough draft that I sent to you, and it was all narration. There wasn't any dialogue. So let's see. Let me just get to that. Okay, so can you see that? Okay.
Yes, yes,
So I was just trying to fit this because we initially we thought we were going to have 10 pages, and then we found out later that it was going to
that's
be
true.
8. And so even, and I would say before we even started working on the stories, it wasn't like a last minute switch. So trying to come up with a story like with this big kind of idea behind it that would fit in 8 pages was a challenge. Anyway, so here's the first start.
Absolutely.
As you can see, we hadn't even really decided on the train, the name of the title, right? We ended up with Runaway Train. These were all captions. And all I did was just kind of send you the captions at first. I don't even think I gave you very many. Yeah, I don't even think I give you, yeah, there's like a few little art notes in here. This is like a picture book style kind of art notes here, like just very spare. But this was just getting the idea out to see if you were on board with it, if you liked it. So I'm just going to read it a little bit. If you run away, don't do it in the rain. And then you can see the art notes there because you might meet a mysterious train who will take you away from all your troubles for the cost of a tear and a promise. But this train is no ordinary train, and soon you'll be traveling to places where even the sea folk are afraid to go, riding with strange creatures who will certainly be curious about a human riding a, and then we've got the different ideas here, mer train, water train, rain train. Some might be nice if you share a treat, and then the little art note there about sharing the treat with a dog creature. Others might look at you a little hungrily. If you're lucky, you'll make a friend who will help you. The dog creature growls at the creature eyeballing the child, which keeps the creature at bay, because you're going to need a lot of help. A glittering pile of gold appears outside the window. This train will try to trick you to leave. The dog grabs and holds the child's clothes, so he or she, we hadn't decided at that time, can't leave the train to grab the gold that's glittering just out of reach. And join a new family. And this was just kind of me spitballing, so I had this family that appeared by the gold with lots of gifts or such, which you might think would be nice until you realize how much you miss yours. Hold on to that thought, keep it strong in your mind, and the train will have to take you back. You'll need to exit as soon as the train touches land. Child runs home. Run back home. But remember, anyone who's ever ridden the Mer train, and I just put the name in there for, holding place, will look a little different whenever they touch water too. And then again, the art notes, her family members waiting for her in the rain are transformed in some way to kind of indicate that they had ridden the train too at some point in their life. And if you're really lucky, you might get to keep something from your ride. And then the dog creature jumps into the child's arms that she met on the train. So this was the initial idea. And there wasn't any dialogue in it at all. So I'm curious as to your thoughts when you got this. Like, what was your process? What were you thinking? Because this is not the idea we ended up on.
You reading it again, it just feels so fairy tale-esque. Like just the style of your writing and the rhythm of it. I just, it just felt really classic in the way you were setting it up. And that definitely appealed to me. So yes, definitely the style of your writing, but I just genuinely thought this story had a lot of potential and that my specific style where I also like doing more whimsical stuff, maybe more wholesome stuff. And it just felt like this story was going to be a very nice pairing with how I liked to create and what I liked to create. So that was definitely why I was like, this is the one. And like I mentioned before, your writing for it and the tone you set was very like appealing.
So we didn't end up going with this one
I
because
know.
no, no, but because I think we had talked about maybe doing a more traditional comic thing with like dialogue, right? Like trying to turn it into that instead, if I remember, and making it more
Yes.
of a, you know, more dialogue in there, which we did. And two, I think some of the images might have been a little like maybe wouldn't translate quite so well in the panels. I don't know. Am I misreading that, or was that? I can't remember exactly what some of your concerns were.
I do remember us wanting to do more dialogue-y. And I think I just remember the beginning just was all about this story, is what I remember. And I think, especially like for comics, I'm wondering if we thought like it wasn't enough of a story because it's almost like moments that are tied together with that narration. And it's not necessarily like a traditional plot, it feels like. It feels more like atmospheric. But that's what I'm remembering was we wanted to try to go the more traditional comic route. And so I remember your next version being like we went from there and just worked and worked on the story, but we kept that for a while until we got that editorial feedback where it was like just nix the narration altogether, just have dialogue.
Yeah, the next iteration was definitely still different than the last iteration. Like this sort of evolution, we go from like all this narration. I'm going to scroll up to that one. And then we got to this one, right? Which, like you said, was this mix where we have the note at the beginning, which you drew. You didn't even draw anything for the first one, right? It was just kind of an
No,
idea
I
you were
didn't.
tossing around at that stage. And so then I went back and did more the dialogue, and then we have the note at the beginning where we talk about why she's running away, and that's in one of the earlier versions that you did. And then here the description, with the dog, and it was getting complicated. Like some of these things were in there, and then so she says goodbye to her dog, and then there's the caption, right? This is the part that we kept from the original narration. We had these little captions, and then the interaction here with the conductor and Marisol. We gave her a name that has like a ocean meaning. And the conductor that you drew, I absolutely loved. Like, I would love for you to talk about the evolution of the conductor that you drew.
I, going into it, wanted to like base him off a specific sea creature because I thought it might give me a jumping off point of at least his design instead of like just going in blind, like creating a totally new creature. What could I base him off of? And I remember I picked angular fish because the whole mood of the story just felt like she's slowly getting drawn in by this train and this world and ends up not working out for her. It ends up being bad. So I based him off that and also wanted to continue that kind, like I don't really know when this actually takes place in the end, just like 1900s maybe. So I his conductor outfit, I wanted it to feel more traditional but with like certain elements that made it feel more fish like how his sleeves are kind of look like fish fins and like I definitely tried to make the sleeves like have this shape language of so it looks like fins. The coattail on his jacket is one giant fin as well. So I definitely had a vision for him going in. And ironically, I think he had a very just once like moment in the final product, but in the, middle parts, he was a very big part of the story. And like they had their whole thing where they like exchanged her tears and stuff and she got a ticket and the signing the contract, like that was a whole bit with the conductor.
Yeah. Yeah, he was a big character right there at the beginning. And I'll have to put a cool picture of him, one of your inks that you did of him up there on the side. I was trying to find one that I had on my article, but I couldn't find it fast enough. So back to the conductor here. So we have this interaction between the conductor, and then I had a lot of details here about the train because we had talked about like a lot of world building for this type of
We
world,
did.
which was just so fun. And so there's a lot of details about this train and the sign, talking about the train and these interactions and other types of water trains that were there, like the rain train, the mer train, some other trains like that we came up with that are all kind of part of this world that all kind of run on water or with water or whatever it was. And then here, like you were saying, the conductor and Marisol have much more interaction. And then here's the part here, a tier for the train where she takes the tier, or the conductor takes the tier, and then a promise, then she signs the contract. And we still had, of course, the captions here. And then we have the
Yes.
fun little monsters that you drew, and I love the monsters. Um, Still had that element sort of translated throughout the three versions, more or less, that we kind of went through the three main iterations. And then, of course, we've got the dog, and then the conductor appears again at the end. But, which was great, all of it, if we had even two more pages.
Yeah, I feel like so much of the middle part was us like trying to make the 8 pages work. Like just so hard. I feel like we worked really hard to try and make it work. Um, and well, I remember you like emailing and just saying like the middle is just it is just too rushed. It's just way too cramped. And that's kind of where the third iteration began, was like from that realization. Um, but man, it was very fun. But I think looking back, this was also both of our first times doing an anthology, working with collaborating, as well as making, like, I've never made something 8 pages before. And so I was really did not realize it has to be like how simple and straightforward, like it's not much space at all. And we just got so excited. And I
Right.
feel like we just wanted to include everything, and it just wasn't possible.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because I even, as you can see, like I paneled out everything and I made sure that I had no more than 4 panels per page. And so I'm thinking, okay, look, I've got it down to like 32 panels. We've got this. And so I like send it off to you after I get it down to like 32 panels or less. And then you're looking at this and you're like, oh, there's going to be so much more art than 32 panels, right? Because you're the one that has to like translate this. And
Yes.
you've got the own pacing that the art needs to take. When I was doing the scripts, I had to think about 10 panels or more less than what I thought it needed, right? So I had to really go back and try to strip tons out.
I also like, just as a visual artist, like not necessarily with a writing background, I face the same thing too. I will write it all out. It'll be perfect, like it makes sense. And then the second I go to draw it, there's just certain things that I think just you need the experience and you keep doing it. But you think like, oh, what in simple movement? I'm raising a hand. That's so easy. That's so simple. And the story comes into it, and maybe it's like a really big moment, or it's like a really serious moment. And instead of just one panel, it has to be two or three to get that emotional impact that like the story needs. Because I didn't know how to give you that insight, because it's like it is really hard to know that until we have the writing. And then I'm so grateful that you did let me just take what you would give me and translate it to art. Because yeah, you think it's going to be so simple, and then you start drawing it. It's really hard to do that by myself. And so I just, once again, thank you for like, since we're doing it with two people, it's like more complicated. So just the fact that you let me do that, I'm very grateful.
Oh, well, I was grateful to have a collaborator. It was fun.
It was fun.
Yeah, and then the other thing we were up against too was just the really tight deadline, right? Because we had to just get things done. And that was also interesting, is just really having to be, as they say in the industry, like kill your darlings. And man, we were pretty murderous
Oh,
when it came to the original story, to what we ended up with.
absolutely. I think between like the second iteration to like the what our final product was, man, we had to go in and just slice and just like cut
Right?
off everything that was not essential. It was brutal, but I do think the final product was worth it.
Yeah, so it started off, and we were joking about this earlier. It started off as kind of a Miyazaki meets Polar Express. That's kind of how I pitched it to you. What it ended up as is more of a Miyazaki meets M. Night Shyamalan, because it has this sort of spooky, kind of open-ended bit, right? And so
Yeah.
it definitely had its own sort of evolution from where it ended up. But and it would be so fun to go back and do something with the original idea. But hey.
Absolutely. It's funny. I, looking back, I feel like me and my drawing was like a really big um, push for it to be more spooky. And I feel like I don't know why it just naturally felt like it was just meant to have that. But yeah, it was supposed to be whimsical and wholesome, and it just got darker than I think we imagined.
Yeah, what does that say?
Yeah.
Yeah, so then this was the end panel, because what we ended up having to do was cut out the whole buildup of the dog chasing after Coral in the beginning, because it was just getting in the way. It was taking up too much space because the middle was getting shafted for that whole beginning, and the middle needed plotting. Like it needed the story and artistic pacing for the story to make sense, because it was just kind of too rushed. So we cut that whole bit out of the dog chasing after Marisol. And then we started right where they're in front of the train. And the conductor, he's got a small part now, because the whole dialogue exchange between him and Marisol, that had to go. And then, we got her on the train meeting the monsters, and then her getting off the train, and then the transformation that happens as a process that I won't give away too much, because that's part of the story.
I'll
But
read the story.
but yeah, so some little tricks, but as I'm trying to think about how we can convey that, was going with this brochure, this flyer at the beginning, where we could convey a lot of material in an art note. And this is also the version where we cut out all the captions. That was a suggestion from one of the editors. And I have to say, I was like, oh, but I love the captions, because they're so like poetic. I love having them in there. But as I was going through, I was like, okay, we don't have to have them there to get the story moving along. They're nice and it's whimsical. It definitely sets a tone, but they're eating up story space, and they're eating up art space that we don't have. So those all had to go. And so those we got rid of. We started off with the brochure, and then got right into the action. What was your process there? How did that free you up, or did that yeah, kind of just what did you think as we were going through that? What did that help you with, or did it?
It absolutely did. In the middle version, I do remember just how much slower the ending was, and how I remember one of the main points of feedback I got was how, like, the beginning took up like half the story. Like, we only have 8 pages, and her getting to the train took like 4 pages. Um, and so I think this accomplished, that she's waiting for a train. She has her dog with her. She's clearly going on a runaway train, whatever that is. But it definitely condensed all of this stuff. And I think it was a very effective way of setting everything up without having to have that longer beginning that we just did not have the real estate for.
Yeah, so then we start there, and then she gets on the train a lot faster. She has the little interactions with the monsters, and then kind of the crisis here, and then she gets off, she's running, and things are a little odd, and she's not sure why, and she doesn't really have time to think about it because she's being chased. And then the mystery ending, and I'm going to stop sharing. That was an interesting process too, just really having to pull everything back, just from a writing standpoint, just having to cut all of that out. And then trying also to see how much I could leave for you to convey in the art, like with the brochure at the beginning, and then another little bit at the end where we kind of put a plot point in the art as well. So that we didn't have to build that up with the story or with like multiple panels because we just had such spare space. I think we figured it out, under the deadline, and poor you having to like redraw everything.
Yes, there's definitely times where I was so worried I was not going to make the deadlines. Ironically, I actually feel like if we would have just done narration or just done dialogue, like they would have been fine. I still like what we had, but I definitely, you mentioned accurately that like the little captions though, the like mood they brought was very, very nice. So if we were ever going to do it again, I would totally try just doing captions. It would bring a whole new mood out of the story. Um, but yeah, I'm very proud of what we ended up with.
It was a lot of work to get 8 pages.
Yes, it was. I do think if we were to do it again, because I think some of it is just like you just got to do it and you're not going to know until you do it. And I do think realizing how little space we are going to have, I wouldn't have caught up in the world building as much, even though it was really, really fun.
Yeah.
Just because we couldn't put a lot of it in, like most of it in. So I feel like if we were going to do it again, I would be like, okay, Johnell, like what is the bare bones? What is like literally the least amount we have to make to like make this a story and we can like embellish from there.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, so much of it felt like it was just you and me to be like, how does this work?
Yeah.
Because we've never done it before.
Yeah. Just figuring it out as we went along for sure. Yeah. The stick figure plot. That's what, next time. Yeah.
Yes, I'm in hindsight.
Yeah. Yeah. And, a comic with just captions might be an interesting thing to do at some point, just thinking about it. It
Yeah,
reminds me of the
I feel
dad.
like it could be done.
Mhm. Yeah. But yeah, it was a fun process. It was really fun. And it is fascinating to see the beginning and then where it ended up, which is in the book. And people can see it. Uh, and just everything that, went into all of the thinking and the processing of why we ended up where we did. Of course, nobody's ever going to know that. Um, but hopefully the story will be mysterious enough that the readers can kind of wonder, like, well, I wonder what's going to happen. Well, maybe. And then they'll have fun to kind of build their own little ending. We'll see.
We'll see. I hope so, though. That'd be fun.
What do you hope that people get out of the art? Like, what are you hoping?
I guess I just hope they like what they see. I just hope that the story is effective because I want it to be engaging, but at the same time, I mean, it's interesting to think about. I just want people to look at my art and go like, wow, or like that looks good, or yeah, I just want them to like it, and I hope they do. I really do.
Yeah. Well, that train is just exquisite. And I just love the story behind it. Like, thinking outside the box. Like, you don't have to do a train like you would normally think of a train. Like, you can push the limits uh, into areas that maybe you hadn't even considered before. And I think what you came up with in the train is just exquisite. And Marisol, your character sketches for her and her hair and the stories behind how you did that, just all those fun little things were creative and fun.
The original character drawing of Marisol, do you remember how just straight her
Yeah.
hair was? I remember Crit Group again, they were saying like, love it. You're gonna like it's not gonna work for comics. Because I really didn't think what it would mean to like have a character where the bottom of their hair is just completely straight. Like what there's gonna be some really awkward angles. So that like forced me to like get way more organic with it because I realized like, Oh, I don't want to actually have to draw her hair the same every time. Squiggly it is.
Right.
Just how it instantly I had to adapt because it's like, oh, this works as an illustration, but not for comics. Good
Right.
to know.
Yeah, isn't that interesting? In a picture book, you could get away with that, really.
Yeah.
Just an illustration, yeah. But in comics, those are the things that you don't always think about, is all of those little tiny details that aren't going to translate, or going to be more difficult than they warrant in a comic, to have to try to recreate that across panels. So that's interesting. That would be a really cool post. Is there anything else you want to add?
That's just thanks for making this story with me. It was a lot of learning, so thanks for hanging in there with me. And I genuinely feel like I know comics a little bit better because we did this.
Oh yeah, 100% sure. Yeah, same. Just having to go through that process of thinking about words that are going to fit in short spaces, both as far as
Yeah,
like the bubbles go and then as far as the pages go, was just racking my brain to try to come up with the easiest way to do that, the most effective way to just pare it down without losing the essential bits that we needed. So wow, that was that was like a marathon. It
it really was.
was exhausting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Every time we would finish a deadline, I would like nap like really hard the next day. Like every time. Oh my gosh. But,
Yeah.
and you know what? Looking back, I would not have done a second comic. That was so dumb.
Oh, right, because you have two. You have two in the anthology.
Yes. I
Yeah.
did a two-pager too. It's just, I also, the anthology started at a time where my current job was very, like, it was just ramping up. So I was like, oh, I'll definitely have time for all of these things. And then, as you know now, it's so demanding, and like it is so hard to like do anything during the day art related. Um, so yeah, I need to learn that just do one thing, and you don't need to like have the whole table. Just take a thing, try it, and then if you like it, you can come back. But yeah, I would not do that again.
That's really good advice. Yeah. Well, I think that's a good place to end.